Hi students, welcome to session 5 of Fibre to Fabric. In today's session, we will learn about silk production. As you know that silk is an animal fiber which is produced by silkworms. And so, we discussed about the life cycle of a silk moth in the previous session. So now let us see that how silk is produced. Yes, as we know, as we discussed earlier, that the rearing of silkworms for obtaining silk is called sericulture. So silk production is basically the stage or the process from cocoon to silk. Means for obtaining silk, moths are reared and their cocoons are collected to get silk threads, and that is why this production of silk includes two processes. The first process is about rearing silkworms and second is about processing the silk. So in rearing silkworms, a female silk moth lays hundreds of eggs at a time. As we discussed that it lays many tiny eggs. It is as tiny as the dot of an ink, and the eggs are stored carefully on strips of cloth or paper, and then it is sold to silkworm farmers. So the farmers keep eggs under hygienic conditions and under suitable conditions of temperature and humidity so that they can give us silk fibers in a well fine condition. So the eggs are warmed to a suitable temperature for the larva to hatch from eggs, and this is done when mulberry trees bear a fresh crop of leaves. That is why they are able to hatch from eggs in a suitable temperature, at a suitable temperature. So the larvae, also known as or also called as caterpillars or silkworms, eat day and night and increase enormously in size so that we can get more and more silk fibers. So where these worms are kept? Yes, the worms are kept in a clean bamboo trays along with freshly chopped mulberry leaves, which are their nutrition or which is their diet. And after 25 to 30 days, the caterpillars stop eating and they move to a tiny chamber of bamboo in a tray to spin cocoons, which can be of white color, white to yellow, golden yellow color. So it can be of various colors depending upon the type of silk moth which is spinning into cocoon. So small rags or twigs may be provided in the trays to which cocoons get attached, and the caterpillar or silkworm spins the cocoon inside it, which develops the silk moth. So how amazing process it is. So after rearing silkworms, they are sent for processing. So the next step is processing of silk. So how it is processed? Yes. First, a pile of cocoons is used for obtaining silk fibers, and these cocoons are kept under the sun or they are boiled or exposed to steam. And the silk fibers then separate out, by which the process of taking out threads from the cocoon for use as silk is called as reeling the silk. So basically, reeling is done in special machines which unwind the threads of the fibers of silk from the cocoon. Because as we discussed that a pile of cocoons is used for obtaining silk fibers. So it is very much important to separate the silk fibers. So for this, they are first kept under the sun or boiled, or they are exposed to steam, and after that silk fibers separate out. And this process of separating or taking out the threads from the cocoon is known as reeling the silk. So reeling is done to unwind the threads or fibers of silk from the cocoon, so that silk fibers are then spun into silk threads, which are finally woven into silk cloth by the weavers. And this way silk fibers are obtained. So now let us see this diagrammatic representation and let us try to understand more clearly about this process of silk production. So this is the diagrammatic representation of the summary of the process of silk production, in which this is the first figure, which shows that it is the healthiest moths are chosen for breeding and laying the eggs. You can see how healthy it is. So the healthiest moths are chosen for breeding and laying the eggs. After this, the larvae that emerge out from these moths, once the eggs hatch, and they are fed mulberry leaves. So the larvae that emerges once the eggs hatch are fed with mulberry leaves, and they continue to feed mulberry leaves to these larvae for 3 to 4 weeks. And when the silkworm is about 35 days old, it starts spinning a cocoon around itself, and this process takes about 3 to 7 days to complete. And after this, you can see here, the pupae inside the cocoons are killed by putting the cocoons into the hot water, which kills the worms as well as it loosens the fibers. So by boiling, 2 things are done. By boiling or by putting the cocoons in hot water, kills the worms totally, and it loosens the fibers, so that we can obtain fibers even in an easy way. So here you can see this is a wheel and this is the eyelet of a cocoon. So what happens? One end of silk thread is passed through an eyelet and the thread is reeled onto a wheel, so that we can obtain these filaments. So single filaments are washed, dried and twisted to form yarn, and the texture of the fabric depends upon the manner of twisting. So we can obtain both type of filaments, this one and this one too. So remember that one end of the silk thread is passed through an eyelet. This is an eyelet. Let me write it down for you. This is an eyelet of cocoon. So one end of the silk thread is passed through an eyelet and the thread is reeled onto wheel, on this wheel. And then finally these filaments are obtained, which are then washed, dried and twisted to form yarn. Right? So this is about the process of silk production. Let us revise it again, children. Yes, rearing or rearing of silkworms for silk production is called as sericulture, which is a very complex and lengthy process. So the first step involves washing the silkworm eggs that had been stored over the winter, and under natural conditions the eggs hatch only once a year in spring, when the mulberry trees begin to leaf. And after the eggs hatch, the larvae are spread out on trays to grow. That means on the bamboo in a tray, and they are fed with chopped mulberry leaves for 20 to 35 days, on which rags or twigs are placed on the trays where the worms spin the cocoons. So spinning may take about a week, after which the cocoons have to be unraveled. For unraveling these cocoons, the cocoons are put into hot water which kills the worms as well as it loosens the filaments. And the filaments are then taken out from the cocoons by the process called as reeling. Yes, so reeling the silk means taking out the filaments from the cocoons, and it is also termed as one more process. It is also termed as filature. So reeling process is also termed as filature, filature, in which the filaments are taken out from the cocoons. So filaments from several cocoons are twisted together to form or to make a strong thread that is wound on a reel, which you can see here. It is wound on the reel, and the threads are then dyed and woven into silk fabric. So there are different types of silk which differ in quality and texture, and the differences are due to different varieties of silk moths. As we discussed in the previous session, that Tisar silk, Muga silk, Kosa silk are some of the different types of silk which are obtained from these cocoons. You will be very amazed to know that India is the world's second largest producer of silk, following China. So we discussed about the production of silk, but have you ever gave a thought that when silk was discovered? No, don't worry. We are going to discuss about it. So our next topic is discovery of silk. Yes, it's very amazing and interesting too. Just listen carefully. The exact time of discovery of silk is perhaps unknown. So students, according to an old Chinese legend, the Empress Sai Lung-shi was asked by the Emperor Huang Ti to find the cause of the damaged leaves of mulberry trees growing in their garden. And what they find out that the Empress found white worms eating up mulberry leaves. And so she also noticed that they were spinning shiny cocoons around them. So accidentally a cocoon dropped into her cup of tea, and a tangle of delicate threads separated from the cocoon. And in this way, silk industry began in China and was kept a closely guarded secret for hundreds of years, or we can say for some 3,000 years. And later on, traders and travelers introduced silk to other countries. So, the silk industry began in China almost 6,000 years ago, and the legend dates this back to 2640 BC before Christ to Empress known as Sai Ling-shu, who discovered that a certain caterpillar's cocoon was created from a single strand of shiny thread. So she not only encouraged the culture of silkworm but also developed the process of reeling the thread from the cocoon. So the traders and travelers introduced silk to other countries, and the route they traveled is still called the Silk Route. How amazing it is. So sometimes artificial silk and wool are sold in the name of natural silk and wool, and this can easily be detected with a simple burn test. You can also try this out, but with care and under adult supervision. Remember, all fabrics burn, so keep a bucket of water nearby while trying this. Burn a strand of silk and wool while holding it with the help of forceps. And what is the smell of the burning fabric? Always remember that it has a smell of burning hair. Okay? So, this way we can detect the natural silk and wool, because sometimes artificial silk and wool are sold in the name of natural silk and wool. Okay? Or you can just go to consumer forum and you can file a complaint over there if something like this happens, right? So this was all about the production of silk and discovery of silk, and now we are going to discuss about very important topic, and that is health hazard in sericulture. Yes, obviously everything has an advantage and disadvantage too. Sericulture or silk farming is the rearing of silkworms for the production of raw silk. And silk production today is a mix of modern and traditional methods, and so health aspects are often ignored, and that is why serious problems arise. So hazardous for the silkworm, it is hazardous for the silkworm because in the process they are immersed in boiling water to loosen and separate the silk fibers. It could be hazardous for the silk farmer as well. So as far as we know about silk, there are health hazards in sericulture. So some of the serious health hazards which we are going to discuss in today's session and which have to be kept in mind are, the first one is about the workers. Workers are required to work in units that are cramped, damp and poorly ventilated, resulting in respiratory problems. Even the handling of dead worms with bare hands also leads to illness and infection, and so the handling of dead worms should not be handled with bare hands, but some precautions should be taken, because the handling of dead worms with bare hands contributes to infection and illness, and workers generally need to dip their bare hands into the hot water, and they have to judge by touch whether the fine threads of silk have loosened enough to be wound or not. So this causes blisters and open wounds or injuries. What it causes? Yes, it causes blisters or open wounds or injuries, which leads to secondary infection. So it is very much necessary to take care while handling the dead worms. Yes, the third health hazard or the third serious problem is that continuous exposure to noise made by spinning and winding machines result in hearing problems. So what happens that continuous exposure to the noise made by spinning and winding machines and looms where the fabric is woven results into hearing problems. Even while the cocoons are put into hot water to loosen fibers, as we discussed, workers tend to put their bare hands inside to see if the fibers are loosened or not. So this results into serious infection. Yes, even standing for almost 12 to 16 hours a day focusing on their work leads to severe backaches. Even the spine problems and the problems which are related to vision. So such health disorders such as backache, spine problems and problems related to vision can occur if the workers are not taking care of themselves, if they are focusing more on work, on reeling the fine silk threads. So these are some of the health hazards which are very serious for the workers. Though there have been several studies conducted on health aspects of sericulture, nothing has really been done to help the working in this environment, and there is an urgent need for health professionals to come together and work out the possible solutions in this regard. And even there is one more thing to know, students, that though child labor is banned in India, one does find children employed in all the stages of the sericulture process. So this is not done. Right? According to one report, there may be as many as 1 lakh children employed in the silk industry. So child labor should be banned in India. It is banned, but then too, children are employed in all such stages of sericulture process. So this is not good. So students, keep all these things in mind and try to do something if possible for you. Right? So I hope that you enjoyed today's session and learned many things about fiber and fabric. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, this chapter too. Right? So you can do something about health hazards which are taking place in sericulture and also about the child labor. Do keep that in mind. Okay? So we will meet in the next session with the new lesson. Till then, have a nice time and enjoy. Bye-bye.